The economist who predicted that capitalism would eat itself. Okay, that's what we're talking about today. He wrote a takedown of all of economics in the library. Who was he? The irony of this is going to write itself. He was, let's have a look, the British Museum, right? The reading room, 19th century Manchester cotton mills. This is the time period we're talking about. It is the most famous critique of capitalism ever. It was written and produced by a broke German exile sitting in a London library, bankrolled by the profits of a cotton factory. Karl Marx spent years in the reading room of the British Museum, writing his masterwork, Das Kapital. He was frequently flat broke, and the man who kept him afloat, his best friend, Friedrich Engels, whose money came from co-running the family's textile mills in Manchester. So, the critique of factory capitalism was literally funded by factory capitalism. You cannot make this up. But here's why you take Marx seriously, even if you disagree with every conclusion he reached. He was chasing a question that Adam Smith left wide open. Smith said that markets make us all richer. Marx asked, okay, but richer for whom? Who actually gets those gains? Now, I'm Econ Teach NZ, and today we're going to steelman the most controversial economist in history, properly, fairly, and with your exam in mind. So first up, let's look at that engine of exploitation idea. All right, thinking about the workers, the machinery that would have been present during Karl Marx's times. He was looking at the shiny new industrial economy of the 1800s. He saw something Smith fans preferred to ignore, where profit actually comes from. His argument, it was, if we strip it down, a worker is paid, say, enough to cover a day's living, but in that day, the worker produces more value than they're paid for. A factory hand is paid for 8 hours. They might create the value of their wage in 4 hours. And the other 4 hours of value perhaps goes to the owner of the factory. Marx called this surplus value and argued that it's a hidden source of all profit. To Marx, this wasn't individual bosses cheating, it was baked into the system. That's what he saw. Owners control the means of production. The factories, the machines, the land. Workers, they only own their own labour, so they have to sell it on whatever terms are currently going. That structural imbalance, he said, is exploitation, not as an insult, but as a mechanism. And it goes deeper than that. Marx said the entire system alienates people. You spend your life making things you don't own, doing repetitive work that you don't control. You are cut off from the product that your own hands build. If you've ever felt like a tiny cog in a big machine that doesn't care about you, congratulations, that is definitely a Marxist thought. Let's now have a look, changing tack slightly, the predictions of booms and busts and self-destruction. These are the aspects that Marx specialized in. A boom-bust cycle and what actually happened in real life. Marx made his boldest move, predicting that capitalism would destroy itself from the inside. Let's have a think about it, all right? What is he talking about here, all right? What do we see in the real world? What has happened historically? Let's check it out. The logic goes like this. Competition forces owners to cut costs, to squeeze wages and replace workers with machines. Sound familiar? But workers are also the customers, so you squeeze them too hard and eventually nobody can afford to buy the stuff. The result is a recurring crisis of overproduction. Too many goods, not enough buyers, each bigger than the last crisis. Wealth then concentrates in a fewer hands until the whole thing cracks and workers overthrow it. Now the scorecard. Where was Marx wrong? The big one, the revolution he predicted in advanced capitalist countries, never happened. Wages didn't spiral to nothing. In the West, they rose, and they rose a lot. We have unions, we have welfare states, and regulation that reshaped capitalism instead of ending it. It proved far more adaptable than he ever thought. But where he's uncomfortably sharp is in describing a boom and bust cycle decades before mainstream economics actually took it seriously. He predicted that capital would concentrate, and today a handful of firms do dominate entire industries. He described globalization in the 1840s, writing that the system must nestle everywhere, settle everywhere, which is a wild thing to nail before the telephone existed. After 2008, plenty of very non-communist commentators quietly muttered, okay, he had a point about instability. Now, let's take a look at our exam angle. Here's how this earns us marks. And to be clear, it's not about agreeing with Marx. It's about being able to evaluate an entire economic system, which is exactly what our top band questions can ask. So, when an IB paper or an IGCSE paper asks you to evaluate the view that free markets are the best way to allocate resources, Marx is then your heavyweight counter-argument. Inequality, the distribution of gains, market power, the treatment of labour, all aspects considered, that is your case against. And you're expected to state it fairly before you judge. That is a steelman skill in its purest form, being able to articulate the strongest version of a position that you might personally reject. Examiners reward this heavily, and the modern echo is right there for evidence. Economists like Thomas Piketty, with R greater than G, put hard data behind the old worry that wealth concentrates faster than our wages grow. You don't have to be a Marxist to use the ideas of Marx. You just have to be a good economist. So what's our big picture? Where does this leave us? All right. Smith did show how markets really create wealth. Marx, however, forced everyone to ask who receives that wealth and whether a system can be brilliant in aggregate and brutal in distribution at the same time. That tension, efficiency versus equity, runs through every single policy debate that you're ever going to analyse. But while Smith and Marx argued about where value comes from, a completely different problem was quietly breaking economics in half. A problem about diamonds and water, and it took about 100 years for that to crack. I'm EconTeachNZ. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe. In your comments, can a system be both efficient and unfair at the same time? Make an economic case and I'll discuss back with you. Next up, we're going to be looking about water and why it's cheap and why diamonds cost a lot more. Thank you very much. Like, comment, subscribe. Hei kōnera. We will see you on the next one.